Oh, back online. Stream was cut. No idea why. If it starts working again, let me know. Let me go check my channel. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. So, yep, I don't know why it cut out, but it looks like it's back on. Seems like it's working. Boo, doo, doo, doo. I don't even know where it cut off, so I'm not sure what needs to be said. So let's just start from scratch. Cool. Yeah, I just restarted it. It didn't reconnect. I just restarted the thing and it started going. Is it under? Yeah, well, long story short, it was easier for Germany to let them stay neutral and allow the commerce that they were allowing than to put in the significant investment it would take to take them out. They would have become basically a giant allied fortress in the middle of Europe, which is something they didn't want. So, yeah, that's why. Napoleon did not have the same problem. But, do you think internet censorship is a problem today? Do you think that people are going to a handful of websites is the problem? Is it a problem? Yes. Is it a huge problem? I think the structure of the internet makes it difficult to be a huge problem. Uh, Obviously, these companies and the government have the ability to restrict, but that ability is one of the most limited abilities that we think we've ever had. Right? Their ability to restrict newspapers or radio or television has been a lot more than it has been on the internet. So, is it a problem? Sure. Does it worry me sometimes? Sure, but I don't think it's near as bad as it used to be. Do you think that philosophers and political dissidents can ever discuss issues and form connections in the same way as they did in France and Russia and affect change? I'm afraid I don't. I don't understand. I don't know enough to say what philosophers and political dissidents, how they connected in those countries and how that is distinct or not distinct from what happens in the United States today. So I cannot really answer that question. Uh, but where do you think the revolutions in France and Russia went wrong? Well, uh, the revolution went wrong in Russia. The first one, right, the Menshevik one, went wrong by continuing World War One. I think if they had stopped World War One, it's very unlikely the Bolshevik Revolution would have ever happened, and that was their biggest mistake. And the Bolshevik Revolution, they were smart. They did end the war. Their biggest mistake was just their ideology, the fact that they were communists, the fact that they tried to implement their ideology. That was their biggest mistake. They should have they should have become more moderate or whatever. And the fact that they tried to stick to Marxist-Leninism as much as possible was their biggest mistake. Boo, boo, boo. Oh, you didn't miss much. It's fine. Hmm. Do you think that religion was one of the principal traits that distinguished the northern colonies from the southern colonies? Well, yes, they had different religions, but not in the sense that it's not like the North had a religion and the South didn't. The South had a religion as well. They were just different, and that is one of the chief differences. But there were cultural ones too. They were settled from different areas. China is slowly losing its trade war to the U.S. I don't know. I haven't looked at the numbers. If you listen to Peter Zayan, he says that the United States is in a fundamentally stronger position than China. But that doesn't mean I favor a trade war. What's your response to commies who say private property was created by the enclosure movement? I'd say that that's really stupid because private property predates the enclosure movement by a huge factor. In fact, there never was an enclosure movement in the United States. This is some quirk of the UK that they then generalize into this rule, and I think they're really grasping at straws. If you read like the Territorial Imperative or Boundaries of Order, it's pretty clear that like property rights, whether or not they're understood as that or recognized as that, are more or less universal and natural, and not something that Aristotle thought up thousands of years ago. It's the abstraction is in the description, not in the reality. The reality is there independent of that. Uh, so no, and I find that weird. Like if you ever listen to what's his name, he's a tranny now, or he wants to be a tranny. Forget his name. Who's that? Who's that British YouTuber who wants to be a woman and hates his hair? Anarchopac. Anarchopac. Like he always is talking about this enclosure movement, but there was no enclosure movement in the United States. So. Mm, the Belt and Road Initiative is making China cooperate with Europe more, and I believe Europe is getting annoyed with the U.S. to some extent. I'm no doubt that the United States is or Europe is annoyed with the United States for lots of reasons. That doesn't mean that they're going to get in bed with China, though. I've always found the dismantling of public school system a tough sell to non-libertarians. Are you in favor of a voucher system? So I agree that that is a tough sell. However, oh hey Poe, good to see you. I hope I enjoy Porcfest as all. It's supposed to rain most of the week, but I have an umbrella and I'm staying in a hotel, so I'll be okay. Um, no, the public school system. I agree. Look, people go, they attend public school, and then they have all this nostalgia for it. And even when they readily admit that they don't remember anything that they learned, and they even admit that what they learned was not valuable or was a waste of time, they still grew up there with their friends and whatever they played football or they whatever, and they have all this nostalgia wrapped up in the institution, which makes them knee-jerk defended. But really, in terms of just arguments, in terms of just looking at the numbers and looking at the empirical data and I think it's one of the easier sells because it's definitely not a public good, right? So there's this problem if you have a good um, that you can't restrict who has access to it, then there's this problem of funding. And the thing is, education is definitely not a public good. It's definitely excludable. So everything we know about economics and markets is that this can then be provided. The arguments people make for public schools, they make arguments for welfare for people who can't afford private schools. So they'll make arguments saying, hey, if you are too poor to afford a private education or for your parents to homeschool you, or if your parents are just not capable of doing that, then we need public schools to help those people. All right, well, there's an open question of whether that's justified to tax, right? There's just an assumption that people uh, have a right or people are obligated to support other people's children, which I think people just assert without really making a really strong argument. There obviously are sophisticated arguments, but they're not particularly convincing as far as I'm concerned. But even on top of that, whether or not the government is doing a good job of that or can do a good job is a very open question. But even all that aside, that is an argument for using public schools as welfare to offer them to those who can't get school on their own, not as a general requirement that compels everyone to go to school. And that is a huge hint that the real reason for public schools is not just to provide welfare for those who can't afford education, but to impose some kind of doctrine on the mass of the public. Now, there isn't some uniformity in that. Anyone who wants to impose a doctrine on the all of society is going to be tempted to turn to the public schools for that purpose. And as we've seen, many groups over the years have done that. And so it's not a monolithic desire on the part of any, right? So initially it was religious people. They wanted people to be trained not to be Catholics, and then it was to make them nationalists and take immigrant children and make them good Americans, and then to make them good socialists, and then to make them good woke social justice warriors, or to think the right things about homosexuality or whatever else. It's the ultimate weapon in the culture war. But it's definitely not necessary. Most people don't need it. If you look, it's superfluous. Children who have decent families or middle class or whatever, they do well in public school, but they would do well without public school. And then the people that we're supposed to care about, the people who supposedly need it, and we have to be taxed to provide for those people, the poor people, their results in public schools are abysmal. They don't do well. I mean, you can find anecdotes and be, oh, this person had a bad family life and he turned out okay, therefore public schools. Yes, that's an anecdote. Statistically, that's not the case. And really, people who are like that, people who are go-getters, who are motivated, who are resourceful, they will take whatever is available. And yes, they will use public schools to those end, but they would use anything else as well. So I think that the main reason people have a hard time arguing it is nostalgia and social proof and bias. They grew up with them, so they accept them. And but the actual arguments, I think, are actually not that good. I think they have nostalgia for because they formed their first strong bonds with people at school. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. But what about the positive externalities of education? I would be hard pressed to demonstrate that there are any. First of all, you're ignoring all the I'm not saying you are breakfast libertarian. I know that you are being a devil's advocate here, but uh, people don't even people will say that without making any attempt to even quantify them. And how are you going to do a cost benefit analysis if you're not even going to quantify the costs? And I would question the positive externalities. Right? There's a lot of it. And also the argument they're being justified because you're supposed to learn these things, and then they come out and say, well, it's not actually about learning those things. It's these broader. It's not about providing poor people with an education that will help them in their career. It's about forcing social conformity on everybody for some amorphous public well-being. Uh, Did you read all of Gatto's books? Did you read all of Gatto's book, The Underground History of American Education? No, I haven't read it all. I've read some of his other books, but they were shorter. But I've listened to a lot of his interviews. I think he's dead now, though, sadly. But phenomenal thinker on education. Uh, Oregon once banned Catholic schools in their state. Yeah, and the way it was difficult to ban religious schools, so what they would do instead is make public school attendance compulsory, and then you'd have tax-funded schools. And so you would tell, Catholic parents, well, you have to pay taxes for schools, and then your children have to go to school, and here's the free school. So people would go that. Brian Kaplan is probably right. Education has massive negative externalities. It has massive, massive negative externalities. First, you are taking a huge part of the workforce out of the workforce. And instead of being productive, they are sitting in class being forced to memorize stuff that doesn't matter and that they won't remember after the test. Second, you are stunting their social group and their social development and their market skills. Right. So instead of getting their first job when they're 12 or 13 and working maybe 20 hours a week or maybe more, depending on the kid and how much they wanted to work. So by the time they're 18, they already have 5, 6, 7 years of experience. They don't get their first job until they're 16, and they can only work a little bit because they're in school. And so it just retards like their total earning potential, their total market value is just it's stunted. It's literally retarded by half a decade or more. And if you start adding in people who go to college and don't work at all or work very little, you're talking about people who are not even entering the workforce until their mid 20s or even late 20s. And at that point, they've already kind of solidified that they're students, they're not workers. Their social skills are limited to these really bizarre situations where you have a single cohort of a single age cohort where everybody is the same age, just your friends, and then you have this authority figure who's sitting over you, telling you what to do and what to think and what to learn. And not only is that not healthy, that's not how the normal world is. I haven't actually read Brian's book, but I watched him give a lecture about it at Students for Liberty last year. I don't think a lot of 13-year-olds would want to work, though I think it's good idea. I think you might, well, many of them wouldn't, but many of them would if they could see the benefits. If they could say, "Hey, this will be your money, you will own it, you have the freedom to use it, to your income, you're not just a ward of your parents or the state." And they want things. 13-year-olds want things that cost money. And assuming they don't have parents that buy them everything that they want, they will see this as their opportunity to do it. Sorry. Uh, Schooling has vast opportunity costs, vast, vast. Uh, I mean, they're so significant that I think they're dropping our wealth significantly per year. Thoughts on Tucker Carlson siding with Elizabeth Warren? I don't know the details. What did he side with her on? Her economics, her National Socialism. Tucker's all over the place. Sometimes he's brilliant and I think he's intellectually honest. I think he's sincere. I just think he's really bad at economics, and I think he's very nationalistic, and so he is too, I don't know what the word is. He doesn't like free trade. Teachers behave like cops towards children in a way, if you think about it. Well, actually, the most analogous other institution in our society to public schools is prison. It's the closest analogy. Um, yeah, so uh, you have this arbitrary authority figure that you have to please because they can give you bad grades and they can ruin your life. And they're kind of like given parental authority over you to a point. It's not complete, but to a point. So it's a really bad system. Many alt-righters think free trade is wrong since Ricardo's analysis is simplistic. Well, it wasn't just Ricardo who favored free trade, right? It's pretty much almost all economists. And I'm totally aware of this. Like I remember meeting Pat Buchanan, and there's just a lot of people who have a hard time. Uh, they just don't like the idea of American consumers getting products made in other countries, and they see the factory job that's lost, but not the fact that consumers are saving money on a car. My grandfather had a cement plant that I wanted to work at during high school, and my parents forbid it and wanted me to work fast food instead. Yeah, and usually fast food is the only thing you can work for a lot of people unless you have a family farm. There's so many there's so many restrictions on what young people can do. Their ability to make contracts, their ability to own property, their ability to they're compelled to attend schools for so many hours per day. It really, really limits their opportunities for growth, development, and income. And I think that that's really stunting. Physically, they're more than capable of it. Mentally, they're basically capable of it. And what they really need, I mean, once they start through puberty, what they really need is experience. That's the big thing. People say, "Oh, they're too inexperienced." Okay, well, preventing them from having experiences is not going to help. That's going to make the situation worse. And that's what the compulsory educationists are going to say, or the teenage prohibitionists are going to argue that they should be prevented from having the very experiences that would help them. Yeah, and this is if you read Teen 2.0, he draws on this. We know that young kids are able to do this because they did in the past. Children, prisoners, and illegal immigrants. And I would definitely put the first two there above the second one or the third one. I don't think illegal immigrants have it that bad relative to those two. Yeah. Mm, get rid of child labor laws, allow children to work with permission of their parents, or even without permission of their parents, to be honest. Uh, Definitely. Well, somebody has, look, it's either Mexicans or children in the sweatshop. So, if you want to keep the Mexicans out, we should get the 12-year-olds in there. I feel like that's the answer. Um, yeah, they have the threat of having their livelihood taken away, but children and prisoners, I mean, prisoners is the worst, right? They just have no livelihood at all. And children, their livelihood, depending on their age, is either completely restricted or heavily restricted. And they are compelled to go to school. That's another huge thing, right? They are compelled to go to this place for 8 hours a day for 11 or 12 years and sit through hours and hours of inane indoctrination and really shitty education. Zero views. That can't be right. Uh, do you think eliminating gender roles would end most of the problems men's rights activists talk about? No, I don't think so. My dad was a straight C student in high school. What would have been better for him, going to high school or getting welding and mechanic certification when he was 16? Well, look, I hate public schools and I think that they suck and all that kind of stuff, but you can't generalize and say in literally every case everyone would be better off if they didn't go or whatever. So I got hesitant to say in that, but um, he would have been getting an actually definite marketable skill in the one case and a definitely not marketable skill in another. He's getting a gold star participation point for the one. So it says I have 0 viewers, but that's not correct. I see 9 watching. Ooh, wow, big crowd. It says 12. It says 0. So there's something wrong with my feed, but that's fine. Uh, the state and its is the problem the MRIs complain about. Yeah, I feel like the state has intervened on the side of women disproportionately. Well, the thing about the market is my dad could have went with training, with compulsory education. There is no choice. Yep, that's a perfectly valid point, an excellent point actually. Um, there's this assumption that the bureaucratic mandate to go to school is the best option for the child, and in fact, that's probably very rarely the case. Not only that, not only that they go to school, but they get a very particular curriculum, and that's just probably not the case. Have you read anything by Anton LaVey, Max Stirner, or Trevor Blake? Nope, none of the above. Boo, boo, boo. You don't seem to be into gay culture. For instance, you don't go to Pride. What do you dislike about it? Well, first of all, you say that, but I've literally been texting on Grinder during this conversation. If you see me pick up my phone, that's because I'm on Grinder. Um, so yes, I don't. I'm not big into quote unquote gay culture as it's classically defined. One of the things is I don't drink, and a big part of gay culture is going to the club and drinking. And I'm not into that. I'm not into pride events or taking pride in being gay. Those events can be fun, and it's nice to go meet other gay guys. Like that, I have nothing against that. I have gay friends. I've done things with gay men. I've gone to bathhouses. Like there's like I do partake in some gay culture, but not a ton. Part of it too is just logistic. There isn't a lot going around. Like there aren't big events happening in Manchester necessarily. More in Boston, but it's just not worth the drive. So um, there's a big part of gay culture that's partying. I'm just not into that. So yeah, it's like, but gay culture is kind of loosely defined. It could mean all kinds of things, and like I'm sure there's parts of it that I actively partake in, like Grinder, for instance, and others that I don't, like right now, for instance. Confirmed spooky nerd. Do you identify with libertarian culture more than gay culture? I think that's fair to say. Uh, what do you think of straight pride as a parody act? I think it's perfectly legitimate as a parody act. I don't agree with the gays who are going apeshit crazy about it. And actually the guy who's founding that, the guy who's in charge of that, is a gay dude, and I've met him. He's a libertarian actually, and I've met him at Young Americans for Liberty conference. We made out, and Jeffrey Tucker was there actually. So small world. Uh, Not that cute and a bad kisser, but whatever. I don't agree with this idea that like they own the gay people have some kind of right to pride, and that it's cultural appropriation or whatever of straight people. Uh, I think it's just funny parody, and that's as far as it goes. And I don't think many straight people are going to take it that far because it's just being funny, and that they aren't that interested. But I was driving home on the way home from the nursery from picking potting soil, and I saw a bunch of local DSA protesting for universal health care. Should I have veered onto the sidewalk, or is that wrong? No, I think that would have been a public good. You would have been creating a positive externality for the world. What are your thoughts on paleo libertarianism? I think it just depends, right? Like some of them, some of it's completely unobjectionable, and some of it's stuff that I wouldn't necessarily do, but wouldn't necessarily think is wrong. So um, the idea that we're going to align with conservatives, I definitely uh, feel how that can make a lot of sense, and I feel like it depends on the issue, but I think in general, libertarians are going to get a better shake from conservatives than from leftists. But you can't sell your soul to the devil, though. Conservatives campaign as libertarians but govern as Democrats. Yeah, this is a thing you notice a lot. Like conservatives use libertarian rhetoric whenever they want to debate, and then when they want to govern, they are socialists. So they get elected on using our stealing our thunder, and then betray us. It's really bad. Typing on Grinder now. You are correct, Pentazoid. There's a very cute uncut twink who keeps messaging me, and priorities are priorities. That, Jim Jesus, you're stealing that from Michael Malice. Yeah, I mean, conservatism is just kind of just the word itself. It doesn't make any sense because it's kind of like whatever exists, they are for. And so if they could fight something that's new, some new policy, but once it gets implemented, then they become in favor of it. Are you racially Jewish? No, not at all. Not even a little. I'm just genitally Jewish. Do I look Jewish? Do I seem Jewish? Do I look Jewish? I No. I'm like pure Aryan. When I was in England, I actually met a Jewish guy who his fetish is to be is anti-Semitic kink. So he was Jewish, but he liked being slandered as a dirty Jew, and you would be like, "Oh, I've got an Aryan cock, and you're just a piece of like Auschwitz garbage or whatever." And he loved it. He thought it was fun. So I said some pretty fucked up anti-Semitic shit to him, and I'm pretty sure he masturbated to it for months. But do, do, do. To each his own, right? I mean, the one time I hooked up with a tranny, they were into getting degraded as well. So I was just saying the most terrible things. You're not a real man. You'll never be a real man. You don't have a penis. You're just a wannabe. You're just a Barbie doll. You're a freak. And like they just ate it up. They loved it. Honest question: why does being gay revolve around indiscriminate sex and rarely love? It doesn't. So not all gay people have indiscriminate sex, and not all of them find that to be the most important thing. So uh, I would question the generalization, but let's just accept the premise for now because it's the debatable. I'm not going to say you're completely wrong. I'm just going to say it's a debatable premise, but let's just accept the premise for a moment. Um, the reason is because it's possible. Uh, Straight men are just as horny as gay men, but straight women are not. Straight women, I mean, there are exceptions, but straight women, and this makes perfect evolutionary sense, are much more restrictive in their sexual partners, and men are not. And so you just have a situation where both parties are horny and are willing to have a lower threshold for sexual activity. And so there's a lot more of it. So, you can have sex every day with a different person if you want. Now, I don't want to. Lots of people don't want to, but you have that option. It's happening, just now on my phone. You know, these are all people who want to have sex. Within the last 5 minutes, there's 6 people. So, it's just a different. It's just practically a different thing. But I would question the premise that the gay culture is about, and A, revolves, and B, is indiscriminate. I'm very discriminate. I only have sex with uncut twinks. What are you talking about? How do you get a Jewish girl, or in your case, guy's number? Oh, there's a joke in there, but I don't know what it is. Look at their wrist. Ah, funny. What's the difference between a Jew and a pizza? Pizza doesn't scream when you put it in the oven. Uh, how do you offload a truck full of Jewish babies? With a pitchfork. Uh, you look like a household knight who's part of a Norman blood feud over some farmland. Now, rightful king of Finland, have you ever seen that actual thing? Because I don't think that you could say that I look like that without having done so. Do you like doing a lot of traveling? I wish I did more than I did, but I do like to travel, yes. Do you know Maj Torre? I will meet him at Porcfest. He's going to be there. I think he's a good start to try and bring libertarianism back to the black community. Well, I will, if I talk to him, I will let him know that Breakfast Libertarian because he's going to be at Porcfest, and so will I. Can he do another stream with Ivan the Heathen in the future? I'm sure we could. I'd have to talk to him about it, but I think he is just likes to talk when he has something he wants to say. So, he's not just going to come on because I say, hey, let's come on and shoot the shit. Fun as that may be. Uh, Gays are wild. Some of them, yeah. I probably could go without sex for another decade. Okay, well, you're like an average straight dude. Uh, have you seen the new Mustang? I'm not a car person, so no. Whatever happened to old school liberalism or the people who were left wing on economic issues and environment, but libertarian on socialist issues, or is that extinct? The It's not extinct, but the narrative is being driven by a radical social justice left. So I don't think most leftists are radical social justice left, but they have all the rhetorical weapons. There's very little room for nuance, so you kind of have to be a intersectional Marxist socialist, or else you're going to lose a debate, and they kind of are driving the whole argument. But he looks like an ethical serial killer. Yes, my father taught me how to, the code on who to kill and how to cover it up. Actually, just campaigning with Maj. Where? In Philadelphia? Isn't that where he's based? Philadelphia? Yes, Maj Touré is the founder of Black Guns Matter. Do you encounter guys in denial about being gay? All the time. All ages, all over. Young guys, old guys, all the time. This guy is definitely not Jewish, or his parents were bad Jews. You get a lot of guys on Grindr who are married. You get a lot of guys who will say that they're straight, but they just want to get butt fucked. Uh, I've told this, I've told this story before, but the probably the clearest example. I met a guy. He was a freshman at a local Catholic college, and very cute. And we went for a walk, and we were just talking, and that's all I thought was going to happen. That we were just going to get introduced and have a conversation, and we ended up on a bench in between two soccer fields in the open on a park in a park, and we started making out, and then he got completely naked outside, sat on my crotch, and was rubbing his ass against my bulge, going fuck me," and we had just met, and so I was, it was hot, but I wasn't gonna have sex with this guy I just met like outside. I'm just waiting for the police to come by and shine a light on us, or somebody to walk their dog past. So he calmed down, he got dressed, and then he started acting really strange, like he was in shock. And I was like, oh, it's all right, get dressed, we'll be fine. And then I said, well, how do you reconcile being gay with being Catholic? And he's like, I'm not gay. I'm like, you're not gay. You're just begging to take raw cock from a guy you met 20 minutes ago in public. And he just, it was compartmentalized in his mind. And like, he continued to be that way. I knew him from his freshman year all the way until he graduated. He graduated last year. And towards the end of the year, he started to become more open about it. But yeah, he was completely gay, completely a bottom. He had a girlfriend through that whole time, so he would go to dates, go on dates with her, and take pictures with her, and pretend to be, the dutiful boyfriend. But deep down, he was like just getting fucked all the time by by guys. So you know, there's that, but that happens a lot. You have a lot of guys say, "Oh, I'm not gay. I just like getting blowjobs, or I like getting butt fucked," but they're totally gay. Do I know Milo? I know who he is, but I've never met him. He's not my type. Are you a top or a woman? Ah, funny. Well, many bottoms like to refer to themselves as having a boy pussy or a bussy. Yeah, libertarians are not good entrepreneurs because we spend too much time arguing on the internet. Romano-Hellenic sexual ethics. What does that even mean? Is breakfast libertarian, is Maj Toure really a strict libertarian, or is he just really into guns? Not that that's, I mean, I'll take that over not being into guns, but I haven't heard enough of him to form a conclusion based on that. So if you know him and you're campaigning with him, what do you think? Did you see the gay couple that had a biological child? I read the article about it, but I didn't look into it that much. 'So just give him 6 months and he'll become a libertarian. If you had the ability to be bisexual, would you take that ability? I don't think so. I don't want to deal with women. Like, I think they're more trouble than they're worth. I've had people ask that, like, if you could be straight, would you be straight? And I just don't care. I don't want to be straight. 2070, gay men have actually developed reproductive organs inside of their area, and a new generation of children are born from inside gay men. Oh my! What was Douglas Murray's quote? It's not his quote, but I heard him say it. Um, Gays can't have children, but that's never stopped them from trying. Did you ever get a chance to watch the Ben Burgess Gene Epstein debate? Yes, I did. And I think that I know that they had some debate about the wording of the resolution, and I think the wording of the resolution was very, very, very narrow in favor of Ben Burgess. Because basically Epstein had to show that the only or the best way was his way and not Burgess's way. So I, I, again, I'm not impressed by Burgess, and I think the fact that he was being so anal about the exact wording is kind of an indication of that. Like he's got to frame the debate in exactly a specific way. This is why he has a hard time answering questions. If you just ask him, what are you like with Dave Smith? What are you going to do if Gas Digital has employees and they're not worker owned? What are you going to do about it? And he can't just say, well, they'll go to prison. He'll be like, well, that's not going to happen very much. And, so there's this kind of very common among socialists to pussyfoot around the truth. And in his case, smart enough to know the actual answer, but understanding that it will cast him in the opposite ethical light that he wants to be seen. Right? He wants the virtue signal that he's this nice guy and he wants to help everybody. But deep down, his ideology only works with mass coercion or the unrealistic assumption that everybody unanimously chooses the same things. So I was not impressed by that. But I think that the wording of the resolution was so narrow that you might have to give him the victory because it wasn't a capitalism versus socialism debate. It was democratic socialism could best be reached in an ethical way consistent with liberty through market means or something like that. Uh, yeah, Ben doesn't think that taking property from capitalists is immoral means he is right. He also doesn't think preventing worker-owned relations is immoral. Yeah, Ben, because Ben argues, well, it's this was his big thing. Taxation isn't theft because it's moral to take things if they're for purposes I believe in, basically. Listen, under the veil of ignorance, we would all want to be straight. Therefore, we should try to use coercive conversion therapy to make people straight. That's actually good logic. And the other thing, of course, too, is like you can't have unequal families, right? If you have a nice family and another person doesn't have a nice family, that's not fair. So a family should, Rawlsian logic does pretty much prescribe the abolition of the family. And it's only a lack of ideological integrity or principle that he shied away from that. Not to mention genetic differences. Not to mention he never defines justice. Not to mention we don't actually live in a veil of ignorance. So uh, there's a lot in that I just don't find very compelling. I should read it at some point, but when people have described it to me when they've broken that argument out, it just doesn't seem to work very well to me anyway. Ben still thinks it's wrong to make money in a capitalist system. He still wants social safety net, which would people making money offer. The other problem that he's bumping into a major incentive problem because he's saying you're going to be like his idea of a social safety net is quite expansive and it's always getting it's not just three hots and a cot. It's Wi-Fi, it's vacation, it's paid maternity leave, it's all this other stuff. And so if you're going to get that no matter what, right? If you're just entitled to that, then you're not going to work hard at your job. You don't give a shit about your job. That's just extra money. That's just cream. You don't need it, right? And as soon as they say, well, hey, you're not working at all, we're going to take this away from you, then it's to work from your boss or starve, or sorry, work for the collective or starve. But even if you don't threaten to take away, you get this huge incentive problem. It's a massive incentive problem. And so then they just make these assumptions like, no, no, because of solidarity, workers will work hard despite there being no reward. Ever heard of the problem of political authority by humor? If you're asking me, I've read it, and yes, I have, and I've met humor. Uh, does New Hampshire have a vibrant queer scene? No. Uh, Rawls even admitted he made his experiment to get the outcome he wanted. Oh, I've never heard that admission, but if that's really true, can someone find the link and send it to me? Because that would be interesting. Physically removed. Humer's book costs so much. I really want his book on ethical intuition, but it's like $150. I have his book on ethical intuitionism, but that is not. I think he takes apart the Rawlsian argument in the problem with political authority, not ethical intuitionism. I live in New Hampshire. I lived in the Midwest until 5 years ago. I read Where Gay Father Make Better Fathers Than Straight Fathers. Also, a book written says bi men are better lover, husbands, and fathers. Yeah, I don't know how you would even quantify that. Uh, so I'm sure that's somebody's opinion. You know, a lot of gay people are just going to assume that gay people are the best at everything and write that kind of stuff. Or woke straight people who are allies might say that. So I don't know that's necessarily true. I don't see. There's certain things about gay guys that I think are good that might be beneficial, but there's other things that are not. So I don't know. I don't think that there's anyone who's studying that. I can't imagine that they're objective. So not to say that it couldn't be objectively studied, but I think almost anyone who did would have some kind of an agenda. Yeah, commies claim to believe in each according to his contribution and each according to his need at the same time when we're they're contradictory ideas. Yeah, there's there I think a big problem here is that people have an intuition that socialism is good, and then they try and make up theories to arrive at that conclusion, and then those theories end up forming all kinds of doing all this mental gymnastics that don't make logical sense. And so then they get wedded to those ideas though, and they just have dogma all these concepts that just don't make a lot of sense. Who's your favorite libertarian intellectual? So of all time, I think I have to say Rothbard. Living today, Michael Huemer. What is Fringe's European Revolution theory? I can't say if I think it's correct. I'm not familiar with it. Oh, hey, Bailey. How are you doing? Long time no see. Actually, we've never seen each other. How's Nova Scotia? Uh, Bailey, this is not an unboxing video though, so I'm not sure why you're watching. Oh, during the Middle Ages, there was a generation of cutting off the bottom 1% of the society, higher birth rates from the nobility and middle classes, and over time increase the intellectual. Yeah, so that kind of makes sense. But then the big question that comes up with all of these is what about China, right? Because the upper class people had higher birth rates there too, and in India and in everywhere. And executing of criminals was not unique to Europe. So there might be differences in the rate or whatnot and under the circumstances that people were killed, but I feel like that is a hard sell. Dieter McCloskey critiques it in Bourgeoisie Dignity. So I obviously have read that book, so that's probably where I'm getting that critique from. So many of the arguments for European hegemony and European Industrial Revolution run into the problem of China. Almost every condition that you could point to and say this is why Europe is great, well, China has that, and India has that, and maybe Turkey too, depending on which variable. Nova Scotia is wonderful. It's raining. It's raining down here in New Hampshire also. How have you been? We haven't talked on Facebook in forever. I mean, the problem with that theory is that like the social elites, the rich people, typically have higher birth rates and lower death rates than everybody else. So it boop, boop. The ditching of the traditional economy. Uh, you're moving to Cuba, you communist. Is that for something to do with ocean going or sailing or coast guarding or whatever? And I'm fine. I'm going to Montana in a month. So I don't know. I don't know. I'd probably go to Montana over Cuba. How many gays have you met are sincerely interested in getting married? Hmm, I don't think most of them were sincerely interested in getting married at that point, but most of them do get sincerely interested at some point. So that's kind of a loaded question. Like, because if you meet a 20-year-old, how many heterosexual men are sincerely interested in getting married when they're 20? Not that many. How many when they're 30 or 40? A lot more. And I think you'd see similar distinctions in the gay population, if not exactly similar rates. Length, are you the guy who mentioned in a video that some Japanese communist moved to North Korea and was put in the work camp? Nope, that's not me. Uh, I want to get married, but only if he's rich. I am going to Montana for work. Yes, that's correct. I was supposed to go now and it got pushed back a month. Boop, 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 boop. All right, guys. Any other questions? It's getting a little quiet here, and I'm getting hungry. So uh, let's start wrapping it up. You still practice music? I forget what instrument you play. I play clarinet, and I don't practice it anymore. I would want to be good, and to be good is 2 hours a day, and there's other things I'd rather do than spend 2 hours a day practicing my instrument. So, nope, I do not practice anymore. And if I did pick up music, it probably would not be clarinet. I would probably play the piano instead. Do you want to get married someday? Hmm. I don't know. Do you work very hard? Sometimes. Sometimes I work very hard. The nature of my job is sometimes it's very busy and sometimes it's not, but I will work as hard as I need to do to get it done, which sometimes is a lot and sometimes is not that much. Would you take free money from the government, no strings attached? Sure. Got to go work out. Message me sometime. Sure, Bailey, I'll do that. Uh, why are you working so late on a Sunday, though? I don't always downshift, but when I do, it is so Prius owners can hear me killing the environment. I'd rather play the guitar, which I'm learning now. See, I've tried the guitar. I really don't like it. So it would probably be piano or organ for me. Anything else? Going once, Going twice. All right, so last thing, if any of you go to Porcfest, just come say hi. I don't mind if people do it. So, uh, oh, here we go. Last second. Okay. Fuck you people. Fuck you people. You like Bach? Yes, I like Bach, but not enough to like listen to it all the time. Cause and effect makes free will impossible. Yeah, it's a really good point. Because you would need something to be acausal to be truly free will, but that depends on how you define free will. But smoke tires, not drugs. Yep, no drugs. Bye. Do you like Max Rob's music? He is in Berlin. I don't know who that is, and I'm not familiar. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and call it quits there. But again, if any of you happen to make it to Porcfest, come say hi. It's always nice to meet new people. So have a good night.